Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the To Be Frank show, I have a proclamation to make. The United States of America is broke. We are broke. We don't have any money. Any monies that you see going through the system, we're borrowing, okay? As I mentioned in my last Unplugged, this is the equivalent of you and your household having a brother-in-law over at Bank of America that continues to loan you money even though he shouldn't, knowing that you'll never pay it back. And that's how your family is surviving. Well, that's how the United States of America is surviving. We're broke. We don't have any money. And you see now this discussion on television between these news people that don't have a clue what they're reporting on. That, oh, this has gone now from 3.5 trillion, okay, trillion, to now 1.75 trillion. Oh, that sounds more reasonable. It's not more reasonable. It's a complete joke. We don't have the money. We owe $29 trillion and counting that we can't pay back. We can never pay it back. And the ramifications of this are going to be brutal. And they're probably going to happen sooner than you think. In 1992, as many of you know who know me, I work for the Perot family. And Ross Perot ran for president as an independent against Bill Clinton and George Herbert Walker Bush. This is 1992. Here's the bottom line. Ross Perot was one of the 5 greatest business people of the 20th century going into the 21st century in the United States. There's not even an argument. This guy was brilliant. He loved his country, and he ran for president for all the right reasons. He said this. This was at a time in 1992. Now, I want you to focus on this because it's really important. 2021, 29 trillion. 2092, 4 trillion. When it was 4 trillion, this was Ross Perot's quote. The debt in this country is like a crazy ant we keep down in the basement. All the neighbors know she's there, but nobody wants to talk about her. I mean, is that not really like a way to, in Ross Perot-ism, to really describe what the hell we're dealing with now, which is a, 7-time bigger problem now than it was back in 1992. This is not sustainable, ladies and gentlemen. We're broke. And this is all going to come home to roost at some level here now, and we're going to go borrow all this new money. And you got to remember something. For those of you that didn't watch last show or the show before, we don't have additional monies. We run over $1 trillion in deficits in our day-to-day, hour-to-hour, month-to-month, yearly budgets. We run $1 trillion deficit. That, again, is like you sitting at home and you make $10,000 a month and you're spending $20,000 a month. You can't sustain it. The government, unfortunately, just can go borrow more money, just print more money. And that's what some of these loony people that are all for this are saying. And I'll get to that in just a minute. But Ross Perot really summed it up. This is the crazy ant in the basement. Well, here's the problem. She's starting to make some noise now. And everybody's patting, Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin, who are the 2 Democratic senators that held up the $3.5 trillion issue, okay? One's from Arizona, one's from West Virginia. They're patting these people on the back. Like, this is great. You've done such a great job. We can't afford to spend any more money because we've already spent it all. We're out of money. And my prediction is, and anybody who wants to argue with me can come on this show, and I'll have you running off this show in 5 minutes or less. We'll never pay this debt off. We can't even balance a budget, let alone pay the debt off. And bad things are going to happen down the road here. There's no other way to look at it. Joe Biden is well, this is what I was elected to do. By who? Yeah, you are the duly elected president. You won the election. This is not a show that contests the 2020 election. He won the election. But these were votes against Donald Trump, not for this policy. because anybody who thinks about it for 15 minutes or less can really understand that this is not the road that we need to be going down. Here's a really bad stat I'm going to give you. In 2020, 61% of Americans didn't pay 1 nickel in tax. Okay? The taxes are so heavily weighted on the wealthy, and they should pay their fair share, and corporations should pay their fair share. But 61% of Americans didn't even pay any taxes in 2020. And the discussion was and is that Ross Perot said, we're on the edge of the cliff. This is in 1992. We're on the edge of the cliff. Well, where the hell are we now? If we were on the edge of the cliff at $4 trillion with no balanced budget, where are we now? AOC. What I can't stand about this, I have no problem with her as a human being. She has every right to run for Congress. She wins in her district. I have no problem with her at all in that regard. But the media, including Fox News, is enamored with her. She's on all the time. She knows nothing about any of this. She basically tells Joe Biden, forget about Manchin. Let's get this $1.9 trillion or 1.75 or whatever the hell the number is now. Let's get this passed, and then you could just by the stroke of a pen cancel all the student loan debt. Who's going to pay for this? Just by the stroke of a pen. I mean, this is the thought process of these liberal people that don't know the first thing about running a country, about running the biggest business on the planet Earth, the United States government. The CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, has projected the debt is forecast to exceed the size. Now, I want everyone to listen to this. The size of the U.S. economy next year in 2022 for the first time since 1946. Let me repeat. The Congressional Budget Office, not the Frank and Sarah show, okay, projects that by next year, the debt is going to be greater than the entire U.S. economy. If interest rates ever rose, and I talked about this on the last show, by even a percentage point or 2 percentage points, the explosion that you hear out your back door is going to be the U.S. economy blowing up because we can't sustain it. They are artificially keeping these interest rates so low, and this has been going on for a long time. But if we ever get into a market-driven interest rate scenario, the explosion that you hear is the U.S. economy completely blowing up. Now remember, the argument between the debt and the GDP. Remember the ratios, okay? A unsustainable, according to the World Bank, ratio between the debt of our country, 29 trillion, and our gross domestic product is 75 to 78%. On the last show, on the second to last show, I talked about that relationship now. It's 125%. It's not sustainable. There should be buzzers. There should be fireworks going off everywhere in Washington to say this is not sustainable. Again, it is now, I am predicting, my opinion, you can't pay the debt back. So sooner or later, a really bad thing has to occur. You either default on the debt, you write the debt down, you stiff everybody. I mean, there's no good options when it comes to any of this. Okay. There's a group that's out there. I'm going to close with this, called the MMT Group, the Modern Monetary Theory Group. These are a bunch of beauties, let me tell you. These people have made up in their own minds, and they convince people like AOC that what they're saying is reality. This is so far from reality. Their basic theory is no matter how large the federal debt gets and grows, the federal government can always just continue to print money, and it doesn't really matter what it is because you're already printing your own money. The joke of it is, and these are crazy people that believe this, they have to concede when pressed, that at some point this will bring incredible dangers to the U.S. economy and the American people. AOC and others on the left are advocates of this. And Sarah, when I go through this, it's really, really, really hard to, really think about this from a standpoint that I am a byproduct of the American dream. Mm-hmm. My grandparents and parents came. I started out with not a whole lot. I was very lucky, and I was blessed that things worked out for me and my family. But all this stuff is ruining our country. Mm-hmm. And this is the crazy ant in the basement. The problem is she's starting to make noise now. And what's going to end up happening is this can't be paid back. It's not going to stop. But yet Joe Biden feels, and the Democrats feel, and the liberals feel that this is their mandate. This is not a mandate. These are just people that want handouts.
Right.
But our country is not built on that. He stands up, the president, and he says, I'm a capitalist. Well, if you're a capitalist, President Biden, you can't continue to print money. You can't continue to do something that's already unsustainable.
Right.
We can't pay it back. We'll never pay it back.
So my question is, what happens if we do default? Like you were saying, some of the issues that are going to happen. I mean, what does that mean for our country?
It's a meltdown. I mean, the currencies they get murdered. The dollar gets murdered. Inflation goes crazy. I mean, interest rates go up. I mean, everything. Right. If you're loaning the country money, mm-hmm. would you loan it at almost no interest rate, given what I've just told you? Your debt is about as secured as loaning it to some guy off the street that doesn't have a driver's license and you're giving him a car.
Right, you're not getting that back.
You're not getting your money.
Yeah.
This is not sustainable. And, President Biden, it looks like I'm really getting on him today, and I am. I'm not a political guy. I'm an independent. If you watch a bunch of shows, you'll realize that. If you watch one show, you think, I'm just riding the guy. He says that the biggest threat that we face is climate change. It's not. This is by far the biggest threat we face for our children, for our grandchildren, for the sovereignty of our country. This is a really bad one, Sarah.
Yeah.
So
I don't think, I mean, you're saying that it seems like you're getting on to Biden. I mean, you're a numbers guy. You're a businessman your whole life. I mean, this is what you do. You understand
I don't want to pick on the guy, but I mean,
But you're explaining it for the American people in a concept
But here's
that's hard.
Here's the point, though. This is the biggest point, I think. It's not all his fault.
Right.
This is the fault of every president from Nixon on.
Right.
Trump was a terrible violator of this. Oh, we're borrowing money so cheap. Well, Donald, this isn't like you own a hotel.
Right.
Okay? And that hotel is throwing off positive cash flow.
Right.
You follow what I'm saying?
Yep.
You loan me money, I build and own a hotel, I'm going to be able to pay you back because I'm in positive cash flow.
Right.
The country is in negative cash flow.
Yep.
Because we spend $1 trillion more than we take in. So every year we're negative.
Yeah.
We don't have any money. So the argument about low interest rates, that's a terrible one. So the Donald is responsible. George W. is responsible. Obama's responsible. They're all responsible. I'm not just putting this on Joe Biden's lap.
But this is going to make it worse.
No, but at some point he thinks that he's mandated to do this. What are we mandating? What are we doing?
Right.
What are we doing? The country is financially wrecked. Mm-hmm. But here's the problem. Anybody who's been in Congress for the last 30 years is responsible. When was the last time, I asked you this last time, that somebody took a microphone and put it in somebody's face and said, how are you going to pay for this?
Yeah. No one.
This is at no cost.
This is all paid for.
No. All right. It's all paid for. And let's assume it is. Mm-hmm. How are you going to pay $29 trillion? How are you paying this $1 trillion that the country is running up every year in deficits?
Right.
See, you're only scratching the surface when you say, but they've been telling us for as long as I paid attention, well, all this is all paid for. But the debt goes up incrementally every year.
Right.
So obviously it's not paid for.
Right. Clearly it's not. They're missing something there.
Yeah, this really upsets me, as you can see. So, the bottom line is I love the United States of America. It's been great to my family, but we're really making a big mistake here. And, the networks and the cable networks, Sarah, they can't even cover this.
No, they can't break it down. I mean, like
They
you
can't
just,
even
yeah.
cover it. They
Yeah.
can't even cover it. They don't want to cover it.
Right.
So.
Yeah.